What is up, ladies and gents? You know what time of day it is. It's Zbec time, and in today's video we're going to be discussing what we are seeing here on the Zbec chart. We're going to be talking about those up and coming interest rate decisions, how that's going to affect Zbec, and of course I'll be giving you guys my price prediction for Zbec over the coming days, as well as my targets for 2025. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Of course, if you are a new viewer, then welcome to this channel. If you do like this sort of content, hit the like button and subscribe for more. If you are a returning viewer, as always, welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all here. So we're diving straight into this video, and first and foremost, let's just discuss Zbec here on the shorter term. We are on the 1 hour chart right now, and this is the picture that we see. Of course, just to give you guys a bit of context, Zbec has done this beautiful rally from April the 23rd to a high there of 0.22 cents on the 5th of May. Of course, right now we are consolidating within this uptrend. Of course, you can see the uptrend here on Zbec has been alive and well. And now we are seeing the prices kind of bouncing between the support that we have here, which has been tested, as you can see, on multiple different occasions, and this upper resistance here. And this essentially gives us this triangle here on Zbec. And what we are going to be seeing within an hour, guys, of course, that interest rate decision that's coming out at 7 p.m. my time, so just less than an hour from now. Of course, I wanted to get this video out a little bit earlier for you guys, but I've been hung up with some other stuff, so I do apologize that this is come out a little bit late. But essentially what we want to look for is the interest rate that's going to be set later today. Of course, that's happening at 7 p.m. my time, so that's 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US, where it's actually happening. And of course, it's important for us as Zbec holders to know what this is going to be, because if the interest rates do decline, or if there is a hint that interest rates will decline in the near future, then it's going to be very, very bullish, not just for Zbec, but for the whole crypto market. So as we can see, the market at the moment is expecting 4.5%. They're expecting no change in interest rates. So if you're interested, particularly as a shorter term holder here on Zbec, what you want to look for is when this value comes out on the actual column. If it's anything but 4.5%, prepare yourself for a massive move. If the actual is 4.25%, for example, just like what they predict in the UK tomorrow for their interest rate decision, that is going to be extremely bullish for the whole market. However, if it's something like 4.75%, which is very unlikely, but nonetheless, if that does happen, that the interest rate actually goes up, that would be extremely bearish for the markets. So that's the first thing to note. Of course, half an hour after the interest rate decision, we've also got that Fed press conference where we hear from the chair of the Fed about their thoughts on the state of the economy, on matters regarding inflation, employment, and where they're at with interest rates. And so essentially, with this meeting, the tone of that meeting is going to be a large component of whether the markets pump or dump after this conference. Of course, if this meeting sounds optimistic, they're optimistic that they can cut rates soon, for example, they're optimistic that inflation is under control, things along those lines, that is going to be bullish for the market. Even if we don't get an interest rate cut at this time, but we get a hint that the Fed is ready to cut interest rates, for example, just by what they're saying at that meeting, that could be really, really good for the markets, and we could see a pump here in Zbec. However, if the meeting's more focused on the risks and the downsides, and they're not sounding ready to cut those interest rates, then that would be quite bearish here for Zbec. Of course, what I think we could see in the near future is something like this, where if the meeting turns out to be good, we see a pump out of this triangle. From this triangle, we get a nice price target. So we could potentially see something like this, where if the prices do shoot up here on Zbec, because we get a very good response from the interest rate decision, prices could be heading towards 0.24 cents, a 27% upside. However, if we see the market react bearishly to that, then we could see a breakdown from this shorter term triangle, and that could put the prices here on Zbec at 0.14 cents. So this is something that I'm watching for, this shorter term triangle. If we do see a breakout or a breakdown, we could potentially see those price targets in play there. course, one more thing to note as well about these interest rates. Although we're not sure how the outcome will be and we're not sure how the market will react, we do know that the Fed is already starting to buy up bonds. And essentially, in this action where they're buying up 3-year bonds, this is basically quantitative easing. Essentially, they're adding liquidity into the markets by buying back those bonds. And like I say, an increase in liquidity in the markets is generally good for the prices. So some people over the past few days have noticed that the Fed had been buying up these bonds, and this could be a foreshadow for what's to come later today. Of course, we don't know that for sure, but maybe we see something a bit more optimistic from the press conference regarding quantitative easing. If we do hear that, once again, very, very bullish for the markets. So that's just something that we have noticed as well. So of course, that in a nutshell is what we're watching for here in the shorter term. I'm excited to see what happens at the end of the day. Of course, if you are looking to trade over the next few hours, just be careful because we generally tend to see a lot of volatility here in the markets when we get that interest rate data come out. So just be careful if you are in some trades. Of course, here on the longer term, I am still very, very bullish here on Zbec. I do think we've seen an extremely long accumulation period, and I only think it's a matter of time before we see much higher prices here on Zbec. Here are the 3 things that I am mainly looking for. The first thing that I am looking for here on Zbec is this support that's been tested now twice on Zbec. We've got this sort of double bottom structure here on Zbec, and the first resistance that we have that we've been monitoring on this channel for a very long time now is this one that goes across like this. We can see prices have come up to this resistance 5 times almost perfectly before breaking out just a few days ago. And so essentially, what we should see on Zbec, since we've seen a clear breakout to the upside, the price is heading towards 0.33 cents as one of our slightly longer term price targets. I do think that if that interest rate data that comes out is good, that could kickstart Zbec on its way towards this price target at 0.33 cents. Of course, guys, if you are looking for a great place to buy Zbec, then look no further than the MEXC exchange. They have some of the lowest trading fees. They don't require KYC to get started. And for a limited time only, they're giving every new user who signs up in the link in the description down below $20 to get started. So if you want to make use of that offer, sign up using the link in the description down below. It takes less than a minute to do so. Don't forget to deposit some fiat currency or crypto into your account, and then they'll give you that $20 straight away. So you can, for example, buy some Zbec or trade any such breakouts. Of course, thank you guys for supporting this channel. Let's get back into this video. So this is one of the first price targets that I am looking for. What I'm also monitoring here on the Zbec chart is this upper, more extended resistance that we have here. At the moment, the prices have come up to this level at roughly 0.21, 0.22 on several different occasions. So what we could potentially also have is this sort of pattern here where it is a more extended double bottom pattern, very similar to the previous pattern that I showed you, but we still need to break out to the upside of this one. Of course, I'm paying attention to what Zbec does, particularly as prices approach this upper resistance at roughly 0.21 cents, because if we see a breakout, that means prices shoot up above this level like this, and we see an increase in trading volume as it does so. We could be looking at this more extended price target that sits at 0.67 cents. That's a 214% upside if that does occur. Now, the final longer term price target that I'm looking at here on Zbec is something that comes from this. Of course, another resistance that we have been paying attention to here on Zbec. And as you can see, this resistance had tested that all-time high there in April 2024. We had the February 25 peak as the second test. And just recently, if I go on the 1 hour chart, you guys can see that the prices actually came up to this resistance on yet another occasion. We got a rejection. We saw some sort of breakout to the upside, and now this consolidation right by this resistance. So essentially, we have this upper resistance that's been pretty well respected. And if, again, we get that breakout to the upside from this resistance, we get a clear pump past this level here, then we could be looking at this as some sort of right angle triangle, and this would give Zbec the most bullish price target of the distance between the first test of support to the resistance. We look at the charts to where it gets us to, and that my friends gives us a price target of 0.95 cents. So that is a 400% upside here on Zbec if we see a successful breakout from this right angled triangle. Of course, very lastly as well, stemming from the fib levels, we know that Zbec loves the fib levels, and we can use these fib levels to predict where we might see Zbec reach in 2025. The two levels that I am looking for is the 2 fib there and the 2.618 fib. The 2 fib gives us a price target of 1.7 cents. And this last one here, 2.618, gives us a potential price target on Zbec of near 5 cents if we can get there. So those are some of my price targets that I have for Zbec in 2025. Of course, the way I'm playing these is level by level. Of course, if we get to a certain price target and the prices start to look weak, for example, we see a lot of selling pressure, we start to see some sort of price pattern that tells us we could be seeing the prices go down, then that would be, in my opinion, a great place to be taking some profits. But of course, I make regular videos here on Zbec, so if I see anything like that, I will be sure to keep you guys up to date. For now, I'm going to wrap the video up here because I know the interest rate decision is coming out soon, and I know that some of you probably would like to see this video before that. So thank you guys for watching this video. As always, let me know down in the comments if you're holding any Zbec. Enjoy the show with that interest rate decision and the meeting, and I'll see you in my next video.